Welcome to the Game Breakers podcast, where we look to bring you tips, insights and experience from the world of sport. My name is Rob Nicolay, and as always I'm joined by my co-host Danny Wilson. But today I'm joined by former Oldham, Wigan Warriors, Leeds Rhinos, Widnes, Lancashire, England, Ireland and Great Britain forward, and now Sky Sports summariser Barrie McDermott. Thanks for joining us, Barrie.
You're welcome, Rob. I'm looking forward to it. We've finally got Danny Wilson to be able to work all the buttons and get on there. So, looking forward to it.
Thanks for that, Barry. Appreciated. That's something we have to do off camera, but thanks for that as well.
I'll dob you in, don't worry. I'll dob you in.
So just a bit of a background on Game Breakers. Normally what we like to do, like we're saying, is bring that tips and insights from the world of sport. But first and foremost, we like to get to know the person that we're speaking to. So can you describe Barrie McDermott in as a person, the family man, and as a professional in one sentence?
A couple of words are really important to me. I think loyalty is important. I think growth is important. You know, keep your eyes and ears open and always be learning. But I think just a student of life and a student of the great game that we love. And whether I was a player, a coach, or doing what I do now, always a smile on my face. If you look like you're enjoying it, I think you then encourage people to join with you. More than a sentence, but there you go.
Fantastic.
Very well articulated. Barry, from Oldham, like Rob touched on then, I'm very proud of it. Like a lot of great professionals that have come from that area, and they're proud Lancastrian. What traits do you think Oldham people reflect, and how do you reflect those traits in yourself?
It's a really good question, that. And as I came out of the game, I used to seek out players that had signed at the various clubs around the leagues when I knew they were from Oldham, and I would sit them down. I would say, look, you're an Oldham lad. Predominantly we're playing teams where there's only probably 2 or 3 decent players, and if you're somebody that progresses, more often than not you're carrying that team. So you've got strength of character, you've got resilience, you've got all those traits that you want within a good player inside a successful system. But we as Oldhamers don't necessarily get bogged down with a scoreboard, and I know that probably doesn't make sense when you're talking about elite level performances, but we as Oldhamers, there's Waterhead where I was probably spent the bulk of my career, and I'm well known for my connection to Waterhead. I started at Saddleworth Rangers because of a friend of mine's father was the coach, and he volunteered to pick me up and take me there, and I found a love for rugby league from that point. St Anne's, and then Salem, Higginshaw, a couple of others that are sort of sporadic within the youth system and the open age. So in Oldham, with 4 or 5 teams off and on, we don't tend to produce masses of players, but what we do is we produce decent ones. I think as some of the ones playing at the minute, Mark Sneed, of course, at Hull FC, Jordan Turner, who's at Huddersfield Giants now. We've got Josh Thulis, who's making his way at Warrington Wolves. If you look back in my day, we had Yeston Harris, we had Kevin Sinfield, Paul Sculthorpe. Them last 3 really didn't do much in the game. I've never heard of them since they've done now, really, had the Sinfield, Sculthorpe and Harris. So I was around about that, and then go a little bit beyond that. You're talking about players like Leo Casey, Ian Sherratt, Mike Ford, a little bit further back than that, Terry Flanagan. So we do tend to produce good lads. So what traits do I have from Oldham? Proud of my roots, very grounded as an individual. You mentioned my family ties. Oldham as a town is very much steeped in that family history, and we tend to look after each other, and there isn't too much jealousy amongst the Oldham lads. We all tend to look after each other. We'd all bump into each other along the rugby circuit or in the Tesco's on Huddersfield Road, and it doesn't matter. You shake hands, you wish everybody well, and that humble attitude, that humility is ingrained in you in Oldham. You're not allowed to get too big for your station because people pull you back. We've got one of the all-time great Premier League players in Paul Scholes, just up the road, and only because his kids are grown up now. A couple of years gone by, you'd see him pushing a pram. You'd see him in the local supermarket just shopping for his for his groceries and his goods. So I think as a town, Oldham has got some pretty good values and pretty good ethics and principles.
What you're touching on there is outstanding, and we were sports Paul Sculthorpe in here, and reflecting of yourself, giving up your own time to speak to us is testament to that humility. How important is humility in terms of leadership and being successful?
When you're within a team environment, and let's talk on the level of a captain, because Paul Sculthorpe, Kevin Sinfield, yes, Darren Harris, just to name but three. If you chucked Andy Farrell in there, were four of the best captains I was ever lucky enough to be around. And as a player, I understood that I couldn't outshout them, I couldn't outperform them. What I needed to be was be a regimental sergeant major. I'm just above the squaddies and just above the soldiers of the troop, but I'm not, I'm not in charge of making those big decisions. So leadership and having humility as a leader, I understood that I don't have all the answers. I think that was a great strength of mine, and I still see that now as being really important. Eyes and ears open, always learning. I was talking with a couple of mates the other day, and we were on a Zoom chat like this, and I was talking about missing a Saturday afternoon game, missing a Sunday morning game up at Waterhead. Watching an amateur game keeps me as a commentator, if you like, or a summariser. It keeps me grounded, because whilst on a Thursday or a Friday night, I'm talking about the nuances of our sport, the technicalities and lines of running and running at shoulders or counting numbers and stuff like that. You go watch a game on a Saturday morning, they don't know, and they don't care about numbers and shape and stuff like that. They want to play, they want to enjoy it, they want to come off, and whether it's ended up in a bit of that or it's ended up in a dubious forward pass try, they're not bothered. They want a couple of pints and enjoy the weekend on the back of it. So in summary, how does humility help with leadership? I think leadership is a broad term for being responsible for other people around you. And if, whilst you're responsible for those people, you need to listen, then I think that's very important as well.
Outstanding. And just going on your career, you spoke about coming back, for Waterhead and the amateurs. You've had an unbelievable career as a player, and now as a successful businessman in a whole host of capacities. But I've read that nearly wasn't to be. You set your sights on potentially a career in the army, but after an accident that didn't materialise. And we'll speak about resilience. Can you just take us through that and how that changed your kind of direction?
It was the 5th of December, down in 1987, whilst in a local field with a pal of mine, messed about with an air rifle, ricocheted off a plastic bottle, hit my nose and went into my eye and blinded me on the spot. Later on in the following year, I had an operation to remove my right eye, and that was my dreams of going in the army gone. And really, the army was only a vehicle. I've always been a bit of a fighter, and I thought to myself, if I have a gun in my hand, I have a good chance of winning. But really, it was a vehicle to travel the world, see new places, experiences, people, just grow in my mind and in my wealth of knowledge. So whilst that door shut, there's no getting around the fact that there was a period of trouble for me. I couldn't accept authority. Whilst rugby was a great place for me to get a lot of that stuff out of my system, in Civvy Street and in pubs and nightclubs of Oldham, I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I couldn't be beaten in any argument, discussion or confrontation. So I got myself in a bit of bother, like everyone, or most people anyway. I grew up, and I just honed in on the thing that I enjoyed most of all, which was rugby. And rugby league was something that if I just fine-tuned and learned to play with controlled aggression and not just whacking everybody who I came across. If I controlled that aggression, then I could chisel out a future in rugby league. I played for Bala first, and a Bala tour that went to New Zealand to play against the likes of Stephen Kearney, Ruben Wiki, Tana Umanga, Willie Porchin. Great New Zealand players, but the tour I was on was a phenomenal group of players. Out of 25, all but 3 signed pro. So back in those days, the under-19s Barla tour or Barla Great Britain teams were where all the professional clubs used to cherry pick the best players, but very often people got signed before that. So Tony Barra, Chris Joyne, Bobby Goulding, 3 outstanding players to name a few. They'd already gone and signed professionals. So for that group of players, 20 odd of them, to go on and try and make their way in the professional ranks was a sign of the quality of the players that at that stage, and I'm sure we might talk about the scholarship and the academy and what it benefits the professional game and maybe what it does to the amateur game a little bit later on. But players on that tour, a guy called Ian McRae, who was from Hull. If I try and think of the players from Hull, Mark Dusher, who was a centre that signed for Warrington, he was another Hull lad. But Terry O'Connor, Paul Anderson, Darren Fleary, David Bradbury, great players. Richard Chamberlain, who played for Hull, another Hull lad. So we had great players who went on to have good careers. So the grounding that I had in those formative years, 16, 17, 18, was in the amateur game. And I think, yes, it was influenced heavily by what happened back in 1987 with my eye, because I had something taken away from me by being a bit blasé and a bit naive on some of the things. So when some of those experiences were similar in rugby league, and I had fallouts with coaches early on in my career, I probably started to adopt the mindset that, look, I've just got to give that coach what he wants. I can be as pig-headed as anybody at times, and that certainly affected me in my playing career. But when I did think to myself in the cold light of day, and I looked at it objectively, look, what does this team need from me? What can I bring to the team? And what does the coach need from me? The times where those 3 things all married up were great periods in my career. So I'll always be grateful to Oldham for giving me the chance. I'll always be grateful to Wigan for giving me the chance to do it at the highest level. But then from those 2 clubs, my experiences made me, I think, a good professional and hopefully a great professional near the end for the Leeds Rhinos.
Yeah, just going on to that. Obviously, your career itself is a legacy, and inducted into the Leeds Rhinos or Leeds Rugby Hall of Fame. How do you reflect on your career? Going from Oldham to them being a Great Britain international. That journey.
With great gratitude of the people that helped me. I were really lucky with the environments that I were in. When I signed at Oldham, with seasoned pros who knew what it took to win, knew what it took to survive in a world of working during the day, playing rugby at weekend, and not losing yourself in a workload of what could be 80, 90 hours sometimes. So great advice early on. Believe it or not, some of the players that I played with also taught me about losing. So you asked about Oldhamers and the traits that we have. Well, we lose, and we lose very often. So not getting bogged down in results, not getting bogged down in whether the game went against you. Two people I'm really grateful to, a guy called Ian Sherratt, who played at Oldham and Salford, and Shane Taplier, who played all around the lower end of the championship as it is now. And some of the things that they spoke to me about having a commitment to your mates, having a commitment to the people on the field, but also having a responsibility to the people around you, the community of Oldham. They didn't necessarily expect us to win every week, but they didn't want us to get beaten. And I think there's a big difference in those 2 things. So I look back with great fondness, and I was lucky to be at Wigan when they had a tremendous team. I was also really lucky to get biffed out of Wigan, because if it wasn't for being biffed out of Wigan, I would never have joined the Leeds Rhinos. And not just because of the things that we won, but because of the experiences that loss gave me. When you get that thing snatched away from you, that teaches you humility. It teaches you about, you know, some of the things that I'm not too proud of. Some of them at Wigan, and then early on at my time at Leeds, when I was in a nightclub incident where I was CS gassed, first person to be CS gassed in the United Kingdom. So that kind of embarrassment for me, yes, I deserved to be embarrassed, but my family didn't deserve to be embarrassed. My grandma, my sister, my mum. So life taught me a couple of really, really harsh lessons in my teens and my 20s. But rugby league was the thing that I always tried to give my best to, and I'm very passionate as a rugby league man. I'm proud to now be part of bringing new people to watch it and be passionate and engaged with it, and I take that very seriously as well. So I won a lot, I lost a bit. You know, people sort of put me in this bracket of players who just got red carded all the time. Listen, I lost a few. I won more than I lost, and that's about as good as you can expect when you step up to the line and you challenge the big blokes. That was something I always tried to do as well. I didn't often waste time with the small halfbacks, partly because I couldn't catch them, I couldn't get anywhere near them, so I just used to pick on the big fellas. And like I say, some you win, some you lose. But I think rugby league in my career as a player taught me a lot of lessons that I then pushed on to the next phase of my life, because it's important as a player transitioning into your sort of mid-30s, early 40s, when it is that the game leaves you, that you learn to utilise the skills and the skill set that you learn as a player, which is something that, you know, I'm still evaluating that now. I'm still fine-tuning those experiences as a rugby player into normal civvy street.
Just before I go on to touching about the humility and resilience you was talking about there, I can't let it go about the CS gas. What was all that about?
Well, there is a long story and a true story, but it's not half as impressive as the one that gets told on across a bar. So yeah, just out in a nightclub, being a gobshite, as sometimes I had the tendency to do, not listening, not taking on board. I had a fair few run-ins with the police in Oldham, you know, over a couple of years. So when they were telling me that I needed to come outside and talk about something that had gone on, which I wasn't involved in, I just told them to jog on. And you know, a confrontation happened, and like I said, the urban myth is a lot better. The urban myth gives me taking on about 15 coppers and coming off even. So I'll stick with the urban myth. But yeah, the lesson of the day for that one was, when you're not in trouble, just go and talk to people instead of being a gobshite.
Yeah. Was that down to one of your losses then? But you win some, you lose some. CS gas, a definite loss.
I'll let a draw. I'll take a draw on that one. A points even draw.
You're talking really open and honestly about your career and your lessons learned. You quite clearly very, very resilient in the things you've done. But to do that, you've had to learn from experiences. And like you said, keep your ears and eyes open. Is there anything that you can put your finger on that does set you apart and has set you apart, obviously in your career, but now where you are in life as a successful entrepreneur, businessman, and all the things you've got going on, what does set you apart from everybody else who wants to achieve that?
I won't say it necessarily sets me apart. I think successful people have things in common, and what I've tried to do is to spend time. So I do believe this, and Danny, we go way back, and we used to talk about player development and, you know, what you're looking to recognise in successful players, or players with potential anyways. Those players that are born to succeed all have an ability to keep going, so they'll get back up. So you see kids who've got great ability, great potential, but they never actually fulfill that potential because they think that talent is enough, or that skill is enough, or that toughness is enough. And the truth is, it's a combination of everything, and you become the sum total of the people you spend the most time with. So they reckon the 7 people that you're around, you end up adopting their habits. So I talked about Sculthorpe, talked about Harris, Sinfield. The second 2 I've spent tremendous amount of time with, whether it's being in the car on the motorway on the way to training, or it's being around them socially. Adrian Morley, another guy who, along with Terry Newton, we were very much the young kids at that older end Leeds Rhinos team that we first of all went into. So you look at, or I looked at what they were good at, and I tried to adopt a little bit of that. And when you sit down with players as a person that can influence them, whether it's as a manager or a coach or a senior player, bringing out what they've got to offer is absolutely fantastic. And coaching is getting what you've got into their mind, but also the ability to get what they've got and get them to be able to produce that on a regular basis. So the more the environment that you can control by putting all those people in the same room, then the more successful you're going to be. So my approach has always been spend time with people who are better than me. And Richard Branson often talked about he's being comfortable. He doesn't have to be the smartest person in the room. There's a great strength in putting people, smart minds, good people, talented people, in a room and listening to what they've got. So what I think I got better at the older I got is learning, listening, taking on board, adopting. And I was a bit of a magpie, all things being equal. I would spend a lot of time with Yestin, a lot of time with Kev. Kev, of course, a great goal kicker. I wasn't great under the high ball, but both those 2 players would need to put some practice in. I was in the same car as them. So, of course, it makes sense for me to stand behind the sticks and catch the conversions that they're putting in. I'm helping them. I'm being a trusted teammate and helping them, which then in turn benefits me, because the more 2 points they get, the better chance we have of winning. But I'm also picking up a skill and learning something that I need to work on. So, yeah, the single thing is a really difficult one. I suppose if I was to say what's the thing that puts me apart from others, it's that magpie mentality, adopting what other people are good at and not being afraid to say, I'm no good at that. Can you show me how you do it? Can you teach me how to do it?
I love that. And I think a lot of people would shake away from that type of thing. You get players that would stay behind and do extras, if you like, and people that maybe aren't quite confident would just go home or not challenge themselves. I think that's a fantastic mindset, and I think it's a great lesson for people that might listen to this.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic message. I think that almost leads into this really. You've mentioned a couple of things in there in terms of your time at Wigan, obviously the loss of your right eye as well. What would you say is the biggest game-breaking moment of your career, or career-defining moment that sort of set you on that path?
Well, there's a few actually. Leaving Wigan was the biggest kick in the nuts that I could have ever received, because I left Oldham because I had ambition. I wanted to win things. I wanted to play for Great Britain, play in cup finals, win grand finals, although they weren't around when I left Wigan. But my ambition took me to Wigan. But it was my lack of professionalism that meant that Wigan got rid of me. So I think that was a defining moment. I had 2 choices there. Choice was repeat the same thing and get the same outcome, or learn and adapt and move on. And I did have a little bit of a glitch, but I think because I had enough runs on the board early on at Leeds had a little bit more understanding of the situation, albeit I hadn't done what I was being accused of. I was still in the news, I was still in trouble, and I was still doing things that were taking focus and attention away from what I was doing on the field. But Gary Etherington was the chief exec and just said, look, if you're innocent, we'll back you. If you're guilty, then you're off. So that, I think that was a moment where leaving Wigan, I thought, right, I need to get my head down and do the right thing. But I think if I look at my Great Britain debut, when Ellery Hanley picked me to play for Great Britain, having only played 8 games for Wigan, as a 21, 22-year-old bloke, young man, really, young baby. That was a period of my life where week in, week out, playing for Wigan, the teams that played us brought their best game. So you had to play well week in, week out, because if you didn't, you won't keep your spot. So the levels and the standards of expectations rose week in, week out. And then to play on the Great Britain stage at Wembley when I made my debut, Jonathan Davis scored the only try of the game in a breakaway try in the right-hand corner, and Sean Edwards got sent off. So I played probably 62 minutes of the most intense match of my life. And at different times, there was a guy called Dean Riddle, who was the conditioner at the Great Britain team, but also became the Rhinos conditioner. He had to come on every 5 or 10 minutes and say, "Look, Barry, we've got no subs, we've got no options, we need you. Don't give up, keep going." And that you talk about playing that high standard. We all think that the high standard is there, but when you reach there, you know that there's another level and another level and another level. And being right at the bottom of my energy and effort, but then being asked to go again and again and again was something that taught me that you don't know what you're capable of until you're given that choice of step forward. There's fight and flight, isn't there? But I also think there's freeze as well. I think there's players that actually, they're not prepared to do anything. They don't want to go back and get out of there, and they don't want to go forward. And that decision of no decision, I think, is very often the worst, and worse than both of those two. So I think leaving Wigan, definitely, but that was a negative experience that caused me to rethink my attitude. But the thing that showed me what I was capable was that Great Britain match, and we won 8-4. I earned more money in that game than I had for the 4 years before. And when I'm talking about more money, as an Oldham player, I signed for £1,000. I got £1,000 as a signing on fee. My second year, I got nothing, and my third year, I played for pay. So then I went to Wigan. I was getting, £5-6 grand a game. It was when I played for Great Britain, I was getting £5 or £6 grand in my bank, which was just mind blowing for me, because I'd always had to support my ambition as a rugby player that wanted to play at the highest level. Very often there was no money reward there. It was just the glory and the prestige of doing it. But as a Great Britain player, it was a nice payment going into my bank, that, let me tell you. And it was an absolutely phenomenal night out, which I can't tell you anything about. Lose lips, sink ships, lads.
No pepper spray on that night out.
No, there was no pepper spray in Stringfellows nightclub. So.
Came out in debt, probably. Earning every penny of that in the Great Britain game, and hard work leads to reward, and you just probably highlighted that. Is that the biggest achievement of your career, playing for Great Britain there, or something else?
I think I've had a lot of achievements, and it's hard to pick one. Your first final is always a big one. My first final was for the Rhino. My first meaningful final. I played in a Wigan final, but my first meaningful final was for the Rhinos in '99, when my son was the mascot. I managed to flop over the line for a try. We lifted the cup, and it was another time in my career where it was in the balance. '98 wasn't a great one for me. Injury, lack of form, fell out with Graham Murray, got sent to Bramley. Few things started going against me, but I quickly went back to default. What's my default? I train hard, I play hard, and I try and give the coach what he wants. And having a meeting with Graham Murray in the off season in '98, leading into '99, was a really important conversation to have, because '99, it was a great year, and I really value and treasure the achievements that I did in my Rhinos shirt. I always term it like this. I'm born and bred in Oldham, proud to be an Oldhamer, but I was made in Leeds, and Leeds gave me so much, taught me so much, and that's the reason I still give back. I still try and get involved in any way I can for the Rhinos. I would do for most things going on in rugby league, but particularly for the Rhinos, I've got so many great friends there, so many long-standing bonds and friendships that I do owe that club a lot. So whilst I'm doing my job as a pundit and a summariser on Sky, I try and play it straight as a die. But I don't think anybody for 1 minute doesn't realise that the Rhinos are my team, and if they lose, I'll play it straight and I'll say that they lost because they were crap or because the better team won. But the Rhinos and the achievements that I had with them, the grand finals, the World Cup challenges, I probably put them all in one big basket. It's hard to pick one from another.
Yeah, just on that, whilst you've been talking about Leeds Rhinos, going into the next question, who's the best coach that you've worked with and why?
It's always a difficult question because I think you take so much from so many different coaches, and I thought when you sent me the questions through, I thought long and hard because my typical answer is Graham Murray because I love playing under Graham Murray, and again, I sort of take a great pride in falling out with him first, not being able to give him what he wanted, and then to turn that round and ultimately, when he's not with us anymore. When he came over last, we had a beer. We laughed about some of the run-ins that we had, and he gave me some really good compliments that were personal to me and him, and they meant a lot to me. So that's my normal go-to answer. But I didn't quite click with Tony Smith either, and Tony Smith, whilst he was an incredible coach, was a difficult man to please and a difficult man to work under. But at the end of the day, he gave me a grand final, he gave me a World Cup challenge, and of those 2 seasons that I spent under him, I had to work my absolute nuts off to keep in the team. And when I didn't get in the team, I couldn't sulk, and I had to be there for the team. So I think those 2 coaches really stick out for me because I learned so much with them. I learned that I don't have all the answers. I learned that if I put my mind to it, it doesn't matter whether a coach likes me or not. All you've got to do is rate me. It's irrelevant. Personality clashes happen all the time in a team environment. But if you're determined enough, if you're disciplined enough, and if it means that much to you, you'll make your way back into that side. And too many times, I think we as people think, "Oh, I've had enough of this. I can't get on with him." He's not somebody who I gel with, not somebody who I click with. I think if the reward is there, if the effort is worth that reward, then dig in and get used to that. Get used to that sort of uncomfortable feeling of doing things you don't like because you want the outcome.
Yeah, I think the question is a tricky one. Who's the best coach and why? And I think you've probably even just summed it up. And a lot of people, when they do answer that, find it difficult. And I think you can summarise out of that is that there's no perfect fit. There's no one answer, and it depends on the organisation, depends on the individuals in that setting. And coaching can have a whole host of different appearances, depending on the person. I think that's great. One thing that you're talking about there, what stands out massively is, as a player, your ability to be accountable for your part in that, your part in the coach-athlete relationship. Because a lot of times players don't do that. And coaches probably don't as well. So that accountability leads to good relationships, and probably that is why you had so much success.
You've got to start with yourself, I think. You two are both in a position where you're influencing people on how they would coach, manage, manipulate. I know that's not a right word, but if you're manipulating a group of men to do something, knowing that if they do what you're asking them to do, they'll get the rewards. When you've got a responsibility like that, you can't get on with everybody. You can't put your arm around everybody. You can't give. And I think there's probably an indication on society as well. Too many people want it wrapped up in a way that they can accept it. It doesn't always work like that in a cut and thrust, high performance environment. You've just got to get the message out. And sometimes you're afforded the time to tailor it to the individual. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you've just got to say, this is what I want. It's up to you to deliver that. So I would always start with myself as a coach, as a captain. I didn't spend a lot of time as a captain. I did captain various sides, and I did whilst in my time at Leeds, get to captain the Rhinos on various occasions. But I understand that my leadership is a different style. And when you're around people like Farrell, Sculthorpe, Sinfield, you understand that the message is more important. It's very often my role was to say, right, lads, this is what we're doing, and let's get over the trenches and let's get at it. So it's a big responsibility as a coach. Sometimes you have to apply the time. Sometimes you have to spend time with individuals because that's not working. Your message is not hitting him. So it's outside in or inside out. Do you spend all your time on your message knowing that it's not getting in, or do you spend all your time looking at that individual saying, how do I get it out of him? So it's never a one answer question, is that, but coaching, if you get it right, is the best thing in the world. And I take great pride in some of the players that are running round now that you've had a little bit of time and influence on, and some of the ones that perhaps aren't running around in the game, but you like to think that you help them, influence them, motivate them on another level that takes them from somebody who potentially is working on a building site as an odd carrier to somebody that's got his own company of 4 or 5 lads and his name on the side of his van, and he's proud of that company that he's running.
Brilliant. Just whilst we're talking about coaching, everyone has a sort of go-to drill or activity or something that you've been part of that you've really enjoyed. If you're looking back now, is there anything that if you was to put you on the spot now and say, "Can you run this session for us?" What would you do?
It's easy, and it's the one I go to all the time. I'll get the tackle shields out, and I'll do a little. Lads who've been coached by me will know this. I'll get the tackle shields out. It's a little footwork contact. It's a wrestle type of session, but it's not wrestling as we would understand it today. But it's just a really shouty, high energy, high level of communication, high level of aggression session. I couldn't write it down. I couldn't explain it. But if I had to show it you, you'd quickly understand what I was trying to get to. And I love coaching, and often I'll drop in with various teams, and I don't want anybody watching or listening to this thinking, do you know what, I'm going to give Barry a ring and see if he'll come and do some coaching for us. But I will drop in, and that's my go-to.
You had a great transition out of playing into the academy at Leeds and as a head of youth there, and we've come across each other various times in that journey, and every time you go to Leeds to play, you knew it was going to be very welcoming and also very, very tough in terms of the games, but also the club was very good at producing talent. So what impact did you have on that environment, and what philosophies of your own did you bring to nurturing that talent?
Well, I'd always done coaching from the age of probably 22, 23. I'd helped with my amateur club, Waterhead, when a guy called Alan McCurry, who played at Wakefield and Oldham and a couple of other teams, Cumbrian forward, invited me to help out. Then I stayed within the system of the Rhinos, coaching at what was the foundation, which is now the scholarship, the academy, the reserves, the under-21s, 23s, whatever format it was. I always had a role within those teams because I like being around teams. I like being around changing room environments, picking up little bits and pieces. So coaching was always something that I wanted to do. When the job became available, because John Bastian, who I'd worked with a little bit during his time as head of youth, moved on, I applied for it, not expecting to get it. And I must have interviewed well, and I must have put a good case across. And what was important to me was we talk about development, youth development. What is youth development? Well, I think it's getting a player from a skinny, scrawny kid to somebody that's ready for the next level, whether you're taking them from 16s to 18s or 19s to reserves or 23s, and then ultimately to championship or Super League first team level, playing against men, playing in that physical, hostile environment. So I put my philosophy really down to 3 key things. So, excuse me, we've all gone to watch a kid on a Saturday morning, and at first when I was given a role and they said, go and watch such and such a play, and I had a sheet to fill in, and it was left to right pass, left shoulder tackle. You know what, lads? I'd fold that up and put it in my pocket and not even look at it, because I've been spending too much time filling a form in, and I'm not watching the kid. You know a good kid when you see one. You know it, whether he's quick, whether he's skillful, whether he's tough, whether he's somebody that scores a try, creates a try, or he's somebody that does 25 carries in a match. When you see it, you know it, if you've been around the game a long time. So I used to say, and it was something I said when I interviewed for the job, is I believe that attitude in a player is vitally important. I would put that right at the top of my list. I would believe that effort is just as important. If you've got a good attitude and you've got a good effort, you've got good effort, you'll create an ability for the game. So it's sort of counterproductive, really, because when on Sunday I'm saying you'll know a kid, you'll see the spark, you'll know it when you see it. What I would say is don't put that at the top of your list. If he's bound to have ability, if he's in our environment, it's taken for granted that if he's in a professional environment, he's got ability. If he's got a poor work ethic, if he's got a poor attitude, you can't improve him, because if his attitude's poor, he won't listen and he'll learn. If his work ethic is poor, you can give him all the information that you want, but he's not going to do it on his own, because he needs to rack up those 10,000 hours somehow. We might get 8-10 hours with him when we're working with him in our environment. So he needs to at least double that somewhere. So if he's got a good attitude, a good work ethic, the ability side will grow. If he's only got ability and his ethic and his attitude are poor, then you just can't improve those players. Now, those players might end up being a world-class, a John Bateman or, George Williams. They might have that without those first two. But if you have those first two, you have a greater chance. So standing in front of the board at Leeds Rhinos, I was entrenched in the club. I understood what it took to be successful. I understood what it took to survive in that environment. But I also know and understood and recognised that once I got them to that level where they were ready to go into the first team, I had to let go and hand them on, because then I had to then go back and watch East Leeds versus Bolton Raiders on a Sunday morning, because I had to then get the next lot. And I would very much focus on the bottom of the pyramid, getting as many kids in there, being part of the process that took them along that journey, and as well, players that fell outside that pyramid. If I have one thing that I look back when I was, 7 years as a head of youth at the Rhinos, 6-7 years, I'm really proud of how I handled the players that fell outside the system. You're giving them bad news. More often than not, they're blaming you for that bad news. But to help them either go to Leeds Beckett, help them get on a university course, help them into the work environment through some of the sponsors and contacts that I've got in Leeds, or maybe get them to a Dewsbury or a Hunslet or a Featherstone for that next contract. I think is just as important within your role as a mentor, a manager, a coach, or a head of youth. I think those things, whilst they're not glamorous, it would be easy to stand on Old Trafford on a grand final night and, give Brad Singleton or Liam Sutcliffe or Stevie Ward an embrace and say, "We've done it, lads." But they don't need that. They've got their own journey to go on. The players that hopefully I would like to say that would thank me would be probably the ones that didn't make it, that were afforded that time and that attention, because there's nothing worse, is the lad. You've got to deliver that news. You've got to give somebody the worst news in their short lifetime and their short career that their journey with that club is over.
Absolutely. I think the impressive thing there is you're very clear. 3 things, very clear in what you want in terms of your environment. And out of those things, apart from the playing ability, the other 2 sets the player up for success in business life or academia, like you're talking about anyway. So they come out of your system and go and succeed at university or with their own businesses. and have their names on the side of the van. So to go into a system there, you know you're going to develop into a better individual and person. So I think that having that clarity is excellent.
Yeah, and my next question really was going to be, look, what attributes you look for in a young player. I think you've nailed it with those three anyway. So just sort of to flip that question a little bit, and the work that obviously we do. What would you say the main attributes would be for a young coach right now?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? Because being a coach is you've got to be all things to all men, including the people above you and below you, but also keep that philosophy and keep that individual belief that you've got as a coach. When I joined the Rhinos set up as a young coach, working with some of those young players, I wanted to win. I wanted to be a coach that would have a perfect season, whether it's 8 games, 10 games, 16 games. I wanted to be that person, but I quickly realised that it wasn't about me. It was about the players and developing that pathway to create the future Rhinos. But not all coaches are given the task of creating players. If you open this up to community coaches that are trying to get people retain players, and it's no longer lads, is it? It's about retaining girls. It's about retaining people within our system. It might be that you have a period of time with a player that then goes on to become a coach or even a referee. So your involvement with them is so important. So the advice that I would give anybody that's around a rugby environment is try and make it as enjoyable as possible, because it's too hard. It's too hard to break bones, dislocate joints, have new joints put in when you're in your 40s like me. It's too hard. If you don't enjoy that challenge and you don't get some reward at the end of it, it ends up being something that you resent. And too often now, it saddens me, and I'm sure you two are the same. We've all been part of the scholarship process that takes 10 players in a cohort for a year. You take 10 players, you're pretty sure 2 are going to make it. You've got 6, 7 of them that have got a decent chance. You've got a couple that they've got no chance, but they've got great attitude and they love it. They're in it. And eventually, when that pyramid system is in action and you get those 1 or 2 players through to the next level, delivering that news can break a player, and losing them to the game, not to the pro game, because Hull FC, Hull KR, Leeds Rhinos, Wigan Warriors will always find more players to come in. But losing them to the amateur game is a thing that we've not quite got right yet. If you look at the elite player development pathway, I'm not sure what we're doing to the level below that. We've still got to work out a way of retaining players in the game, whether it's encouraging them to become amateurs. I don't know how you do that, but I think that's really integral to the future of the game. It could be encouraging them, putting them on pathways of becoming a referee. At the back end of my time at Leeds Rhinos, I tried to put in place that everybody would do. At the time I was working with Stu Cummins for the TV, I wanted to put in place a refereeing course for every player in that last year. In year 3, at the time it was 19, so you'd get first year, second year, last year. The last year, if anybody was still in our system, I wanted them to do a refereeing course. So if they didn't get a Hunslet, a Dewsbury, a Featherstone, they at least had something that might, who knows, become a pathway or an income for them later down the track. So the coaches have got such a big responsibility, but don't then swap your ambition to be a good coach at the cost of what the greater good of the game is, which is enjoyment for everybody involved, including yourself.
Fantastic.
I think you started off with the enjoyment and enjoy everything that you do by the beginning of this podcast. And I think if a coach can help a player enjoy and love something, that goes somewhere in terms of helping that long term.
Just quickly, I mean, I'll expand on enjoyment, Danny, if I may. Don't make the environment I don't give a toss environment because we've all got to have fun. Listen, you've got to enjoy the tough stuff. I think it's really, really important to make your training as tough as you can. And I'm not talking about people belting one another. Take them to that absolute limit of the mental barriers, the physical barriers, so that they can look at it and go, yeah, I've got a bit more. A bit like that Great Britain experience for me. Make your environment a tough one, but also, embrace the enjoyment side of it. And credit where it's due is always a big rule that I used to try and follow. Even if you don't like a player, and sometimes you can't click and you can't like every player in your environment, if they deserve a pat on the back, then give them a pat on the back. If they deserve a bollocking, then don't shy away from that either.
Hard work and enjoyment, is that what you take into your daily life? I know you're very busy. I know your diary's hard to line up. I know you've got a lot going on and very successful with it. Is that what you do now? Do you enjoy the hard work? Is it hard work?
It is, and Rob and I were talking while you were fiddling about with your microphone and proving what a technophobe that you are. We were chatting about my workload at the minute. Now, I thrive on trying to fit everything in, so I have 3 jobs. So I work on Sky. Can't class it as a job, but I very much approach it as a work thing in my daily week. I work for a company called AFX, which we're a foreign currency. I business develop, so I find clients, I manage my clients and make sure all that is working. I spend 2 days a week doing that. You might look at that as a rugby person and go, that's got nothing to do with rugby. Well, that's why I do it. It's to have something outside the game, having always done it. Always had something to fall back on, although I do love it. And then the third thing that I have is my own business, where I work with a guy and we very much find funding, finance for small companies to get them to that next level. So two businesses, 2 companies that are completely detracted from rugby league, but I apply my rugby league mentality. I'm always a man of my word. If I can't do it, I'll say I can't do it. But that doesn't mean I won't take on a challenge. If it's a difficult one, I'll ask for the chance to try and do it. And I might not know the answer straight away, but I'll come back to you. And hard work, most definitely. If my kids were in here now, they'll roll their eyes and talk about me with my work hard, play hard, work hard, and it being a 3-pronged attack. It's not work hard, play hard, because then play hard never ends. The mentality that I've got is very quickly after I've had a really good time, and I always allow myself to enjoy life. I very quickly then start looking at the next work hard phase of my life. So I like going away. I like having a bit of time abroad. With all the aches and pains that I've got and injuries that I've sustained, the foreign climes help me sleep, they help me mental well-being, and I love being away. But I'll go away for 3 days. So I'll work for a month, and I might work 6-7 days a week in that month. But then when I get them 3 days, I love my life, and I'm having nice food and getting out there, enjoying the weather, enjoying the scenery, and having a good walk wherever I am, and making sure I have a pint or 2 while I'm doing it. So it's very much about work hard, play hard, work hard, but keeping that cycle going,
Climbing mountains, is that part of your days off or part of your work hard?
Well, it's actually part of my mental health. So very quickly, when you're a player, you've got 25, 30 games in a season, and they're a spike to your week. When you're not playing, the only spikes that you have are the spikes that ordinary people get, which is weddings, christenings, wakes, birthdays, holidays, all those things that the normal people get. To go from 30 odd to 10 is a big adjustment. So I put things in my diary. I live by my digital diary. I'm always putting things in my digital diary, because what I want to do is be planned and organised, but I also want to look forward to the next thing that's a challenge. So whether it's a run, a 10K, whether I'm doing the Yorkshire 3 Peaks, whether I'm doing something for the SPF, Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, Grand Canyon. They're once in a lifetime things. But I'd say within my 12 months, as well as the spikes that I've got, the exciting things like nights out and birthdays and weddings, etc. What I've also got is I've got half marathons, 10Ks. I've got things that really test and challenge me. I'm blessed with a great group of friends, and one of my really good mates, Rob Burrow. We all know what a tragedy is going on in his life. So this year, these next couple of years, however long I can spend time with Rob, was about fundraising and applying some time and effort to the things I can do for Rob to make his life better, and as well as still doing things for the Jane Tomlinson Appeal, which is a charity that organises running events, and the SPF, not to mention Rugby League Cares and the Danny Jones DFib Fund. So there's always stuff that's going on within Rugby League that I can get involved in. So I do prioritise those, Danny, Rob, because I think that's important. First of all, to give back, but second of all, to commit myself to something that'll test and challenge me.
You know, pretty much lost for words there, all the stuff you do, you know, and again, you touched on Rob there. Obviously, like everybody, wish him all the best, and anything that we can do, anything to support that, we certainly would. But you give so much of your time, and it goes back to that key word I'm picking up through here is just humility and how humble and you know, approachable you are. So on behalf of everybody that benefits from you, you know, thank you for that.
Thank you, Danny. I've still got the ability to be a gobshite every now and then.
Well, we all have, haven't we? I'm sure you was when I was trying to log on.
Yeah.
I could see your mouth moving when I was logging on.
Well, two of my really good mates, and Terry O'Connor and Kev Sinfield. If I sort of put those two in a similar kind of bracket, Kev's always giving back. Kev's a man that's got an incredible amount of time for others. Tez O'Connor and I go way, way, way back. We were mates when we were 15 and 16. We do a lot of stuff together. He does stuff on his own. I do stuff on my own. And we sort of, the three of us, would take the philosophy that you've got to pay things forward. I'm very fortunate to have had a career in the game that, you know, far exceeded my potential. My potential was about 2 inches off the floor, and I managed to do a little bit better than that, but it was because I was surrounded by so many good people. I was surrounded by people that helped me, that allowed me to grow and develop and gain experience and knowledge by tapping into what they are. So I believe in paying that forward, and although I do good for you know, you two have invited me on this, I'll do it because at some point, somewhere, later down the line, I'm sure you'll help me, I'll help you, and we'll all sort of, you know, complete what is that link that rugby league is. We're all links in the chain, aren't we? And if we're all strong links and we all do things for one another, the whole game benefits, and we get to benefit off the back of that.
Without a doubt, and I can speak for Rob as well, probably, is anything that you need, apart from 3 peaks. I've done that once, and it's an absolute nightmare. Rob's done it. He's tried it 3 times, Rob. He's only ever done one of them.
Really? Really.
Sorry, Rob. Not resilient, that lad.
I've done it twice and done 2 peaks twice. Hey, you can't do anything about the light if you don't have a torch.
Maybe they can get a new award. Maybe they'll bring a new challenge, and it's called the 2 peaks.
Well, I've done the 4 peaks. 4 peaks just over 2. I'm going to have to do it now because it's out there, isn't it? So I'll get it done. No, I think everything you've been saying there has been absolutely fantastic. So many messages, and just to echo what Danny was saying, just the humility that you're showing, and it humbles us. You know, the amount of stuff that you're doing as well. Like I say, I think it's inspiring. I think there's plenty of messages in there for players, coaches, and anyone that, you know, takes the time to watch this. So from myself, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. And I think just to wrap up, I think we've all got a role to play. Some of us, you know, are lucky enough to be on TV. Others are making sure that, you know, bacon butties are made on a Sunday morning. Others are getting in the car and supporting Hull FC, the other side of the country, when they play St Helens or Catalan Dragons. We've all got a role to play. In rugby league, we're not big enough. We can't afford to dismiss anybody. We're such an inclusive sport. We've got lots going on in society with people's differences, whether it's sexuality or whether it's your race, religion, creed. We couldn't care less. If you're a good bloke or a good person, should I say, if you've got a passion, you've got a pride in the sport that we love, whether you're a you're a man, you're a woman, or anything in between. If you can add value to us, then come and get involved, and we're grateful to have you.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. Cheers, Barry. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.